Silicosis, you made a mighty bad wreck of me. Robbed me of my youth and health. All you brought for me was misery.
Hello, my name is Ken Donaldson and I'm the Senior Research Fellow in the Surgeons' Hall Museums of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh. This short film describes our research into an epidemic of lung disease among stonemasons who built the Edinburgh New Town at the turn of the 18th into the 19th century. By the mid-1700s, expansion of Edinburgh to meet its growing obligations as Scotland's capital had stalled due to constraints on growth on all sides. As a consequence, Edinburgh had built upwards and was now in large part a teetering slum, dangerous and unhealthy, with no running water, drainage or proper sewage facilities. Following the European trend, the city decided to build a splendid new town to the north of the old town, which would reflect post-Enlightenment Scotland's national and global political and social aspirations. The result was one of the most elegant and harmonious examples of town planning in Europe, featuring Georgian neoclassical buildings, often on the grand scale, in wide boulevards and squares. Building began with great intensity in 1767, and over the next 100 years or so, over 3,000 stonemasons accumulated in Edinburgh. Unfortunately, the scene was set for an occupational health disaster only recently uncovered. Silicosis, known as stonemason's phthisis or mason's rot, had been known for hundreds of years to be an occupational lung disease of stonemasons. The harmful component in fine stone dust that causes silicosis is the mineral quartz. The tiny crystals of quartz released during cutting of the stone are inhaled into the lungs of the stonemasons, where they lodge and cause damage and inflammation, leading to the scarring of silicosis and even to cancer. Craigleith Quarry, 2 miles north of the new town, was the principal source of stone for the building of the new town. Craigleith sandstone is virtually 100% quartz, and so the dust it produces when cut is highly dangerous in terms of its ability to cause silicosis. Stonemasons who develop silicosis almost always develop tuberculosis as well, since the microbe that causes tuberculosis seems to readily find a home in silicotic lung and grow there, producing a lethal combination of silicosis and tuberculosis called silicotuberculosis. There was no formal monitoring of occupational disease in the 19th century, but there are isolated descriptions of the fate of Newtown stonemasons. The Scott Monument was a particularly lethal undertaking which, according to the Edinburgh News, killed 23 of the finest hewers in Edinburgh. Other sources say 18 or 20 men died over the 4 years of building the monument. Edinburgh geologist George Wilson stated that Sir Walter Scott's monument is a monument to 18 workers as well as to himself. The intricate carving of the monument no doubt produced much more dust than arose from dressing stone for a normal building. Apart from the intrinsic harmfulness of Craigleith stone, the other reason this epidemic of silicosis arose was that, unlike stonemasons elsewhere in the UK, the Scottish stonemasons worked in closed sheds as a shield against the Scottish weather. Working stone in closed sheds allowed the dust to accumulate in the air, since in an enclosed space there's no wind to disperse it. This produced a particularly lethal working environment for the stonemasons. A search of the pathology collection at Surgeons' Hall Museums revealed a number of silicotuberculosis lungs from stonemasons. This is one of them, catalogued in 1840 and described as portion of the lung of a stonemason, tubercular, with purulent cavities. The individual from whom this was taken had been a stone hewer for about 20 years. For 3 or 4 years previous to his death, he had been subject to cough and dyspnea, and he died phthisical at the age of 43. Here is the specimen in its purpose-made jar from 1840, marked A on the left. The diseased nature of the lung is evident when removed from the jar, as shown in the image marked B on the right. The white areas are silicosis or tuberculosis. It's difficult to say which. There's a large cavity at the top caused by the tuberculosis, marked C. Altogether, there is a substantial loss of normal lung tissue, and that causes the symptoms of breathlessness and wasting seen in silicosis and silicotuberculosis. Our research described, for the first time in detail, an epidemic of silicosis amongst the stonemasons who built the Edinburgh New Town. Its severity can be traced to the high quartz levels in the building stone used by the stonemasons, and the fact that they worked in closed sheds with the dust built up to high levels, so increasing their exposure. Thank you for watching this film. We have published a paper on our research on silicosis in stonemasons during the building of the new town, where you can get more detail, and that can be accessed from the link associated with this film.
Silicosis, you made a mighty bad wreck of me. Robbed me of my youth and health. All you brought for me was misery.